48 hours. That's all it takes. 48 hours for your neighbor to stop asking and start taking. 48 hours for a father to consider things he never imagined. 48 hours for good people to become something unrecognizable. You think you know who you are. You think you know who they are. But you've never been tested. None of us have. Not really. Not yet. I'm Kronos, and today we're going to examine the most uncomfortable truth in survival. Not how to stockpile food, not how to purify water, but what happens to the human mind when civilization disappears, and why 48 hours is the breaking point. This isn't theory. This is documented, exposed, studied. From the Stanford Prison Experiment to Hurricane Katrina, from the siege of Sarajevo to the LA riots, the pattern is always the same, and it always begins at the same moment. The 48-hour mark, when the brain shifts from "this is temporary" to "this is reality." When hope transforms into desperation. When the social contract isn't just bent, it shatters. Today, we're going to walk through exactly what happens inside the human mind during those 48 hours. The 4 psychological phases that transform ordinary people into survival machines, and why understanding this might save your life or cost someone else theirs. Phase 1. Denial. Hours 0 to 12. You've experienced this. The power goes out, and your first thought isn't, "This is the collapse." Your first thought is, "When will it come back on?" This is denial, and it's universal. Denial serves a purpose. It prevents immediate panic. It gives the brain time to process. But it also creates a dangerous delay. While you're waiting for normal to return, others are already moving to Phase 2. Phase 2. Anxiety. Hours 12 to 24. This is when the body starts to understand what the mind refuses to accept. Heart rate increases. Sleep becomes difficult. Small sounds become threats. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, goes into overdrive. Anxiety brings the first behavioral changes. People start checking locks they've already checked, looking out windows more frequently, speaking in whispers without knowing why. The body is preparing for danger the conscious mind hasn't accepted yet. By hour 24, most people have entered a state psychologists call hyperarousal. They're exhausted but can't sleep, hungry but can't eat. Their body is burning energy at an unsustainable rate, preparing for a threat it can't identify. And this is when the first ethical compromises begin. Not big ones, small ones. "I should check on my elderly neighbor" becomes "I'll check on them tomorrow." "I should share this information" becomes "I'll keep it to myself for now." The circle of concern starts shrinking. Phase 3. Rationalization. Hours 24 to 48. This is where good people begin constructing the mental framework that will allow them to do terrible things. Not because they want to, because they have to, or so they tell themselves. Psychologist Albert Bandura called this moral disengagement. It's a set of cognitive mechanisms that allow ordinary people to commit harmful acts while maintaining a positive self-image, and it follows a predictable pattern. First, moral justification. I'm not stealing, I'm providing for my family. I'm not hoarding, I'm being responsible. I'm not abandoning them, I'm prioritizing my own. The action doesn't change, only the story around it. Second, euphemistic labeling. Words change to make actions palatable. Looting becomes scavenging. Abandoning becomes strategic relocation. Threatening becomes negotiating firmly. Language sanitizes behavior. Third, displacement of responsibility. I didn't have a choice. They forced my hand. Anyone would do the same. Responsibility shifts from the self to circumstances. You're not the agent. You're the victim of situation. Fourth, dehumanization. This is the final stage before violence becomes possible. The other person stops being a person. They become the enemy, the unprepared, the threat. Once someone is no longer human in your mind, anything becomes permissible. By hour 36, studies show that group identification intensifies dramatically. Us and them categories form. Your family, your building, your group. Everyone else becomes outsider, potential competitor, potential threat. The Stanford Prison Experiment proved this in 1971. Ordinary college students, randomly assigned as guards or prisoners, transformed within days. Guards became cruel. Prisoners became submissive or rebellious. Roles consumed identity. The experiment was scheduled for 2 weeks. It was terminated after 6 days. Even the lead researcher, Philip Zimbardo, found himself being consumed by his role. If controlled conditions produce this in 6 days, what does uncontrolled crisis produce in 48 hours? Phase 4. Transformation. Hours 48 and beyond. This is when rationalization becomes automatic, when moral disengagement becomes default operating mode, when the person who existed before the crisis becomes someone else. Don't misunderstand. These aren't bad people. This isn't about character weakness. This is about human neurobiology responding to threat. Your brain will prioritize survival over morality every time. It's not a choice, it's architecture. When cortisol floods your system for 48 hours straight, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for moral reasoning, long-term thinking, empathy, literally goes offline. You're not thinking anymore. You're reacting, surviving.
And here's the part no one wants to hear. You will transform too. Not because you're weak, not because you're evil, because you're human. And human beings are not designed for sustained crisis without social structure.
Let me show you exactly how this unfolds in a real crisis, hour by hour, using documented cases from Katrina, the 2003 blackout, and the siege of Sarajevo. 3 different events, same human pattern. Katrina, hours 0 to 12, neighbors helping neighbors, sharing water, checking on elderly, community spirit high. We'll get through this together. This was documented. This was real. This was phase 1. Hour 12 to 24. Questions emerge. When is help coming? Why isn't anyone here? How long will this last? Anxiety spreads. People stop sharing as freely, start calculating. Phase 2. Hour 24 to 48. First reports of looting. First confrontations over resources. First weapons brandished. I'm protecting my family. They were going to take everything. Rationalization in real time. Hour 48 to 72. Documented cases of armed groups forming. Neighborhoods barricading. Outsiders being turned away at gunpoint. This is our area now. In 72 hours, New Orleans became tribal territory. Sarajevo, 1992. Before the siege, neighbors of different ethnicities had lived together for generations, shared meals, attended weddings, raised children side by side. Then, 48 hours after the shelling began, those same neighbors were reporting each other to militias. Hvala, a Sarajevo survivor, wrote, "The man who shot at me from across the street had eaten at my table. His children played with my children. He knew my name. He called it out before he fired." You're thinking, that's war, that's different, that wouldn't happen here. And that's exactly what they thought too. Every society that collapsed said the same thing first. Not here, not us, we're different.
So what determines whether someone transforms into a threat or remains human?
What separates those who descend from those who don't? After years of research, 3 factors emerge: resources, identity, and ritual.
Factor 1. Resources. This is obvious but incomplete. Yes, having supplies reduces desperation, but more importantly, having supplies reduces the rationalization pathway. You can't justify taking from others if you don't need to. But resources alone aren't enough. Sarajevo proved that. People with full pantries still betrayed neighbors because they weren't just hungry for food. They were hungry for safety, for certainty, for someone to blame. Resources must combine with identity. Factor 2. Identity. People with strong pre-crisis identity, deep values, clear principles, defined self-concept, resist transformation longer. They have a self to return to. A question to ask: is this who I am? This is why soldiers are trained to maintain identity through uniform, ritual, rank. It's why prisoners resist by remembering names, telling stories, maintaining routines. Identity is a fortress against psychological collapse. Factor 3. Ritual. Small daily practices that maintain normalcy. Eating meals at regular times, maintaining hygiene, keeping a schedule. These aren't comforts, they're survival tools. They tell your brain that order still exists. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, observed this directly. Those who maintained small rituals, washing face, saying prayers, sharing stories, survived longer psychologically. Ritual preserves the self when everything else is stripped away. Now, here's the practical application. If you understand the 48-hour transformation, you can prepare for it, not just in others, in yourself. Here are the protocols that actually work. Protocol 1. Pre-commitment. Before any crisis, write down your principles. Physically write them. I will not steal. I will not abandon. I will not harm innocent people. Sign it, date it. This is your contract with your pre-crisis self.
This sounds simple. It isn't. In the moment of crisis, your future self will try to rationalize. But holding that paper, seeing your own handwriting, your own signature, creates a barrier, a moment of pause. Sometimes that moment is enough.
Protocol 2. Designated observer. Choose someone in your group whose only job is to watch for psychological changes, in others and in you. Give them explicit permission to call out behavior you're not acting like yourself. This person is your mirror when you can't see yourself clearly. In extended stress, self-perception fails. You won't notice your own transformation. You need an external check, someone who knew who you were before. Protocol 3. Forced ritual. Establish non-negotiable daily practices before crisis. When crisis hits, maintain them regardless of circumstance. Morning routine, meal times, evening check-in. These rituals must continue even when they feel pointless. The rituals will feel absurd. Why are we doing this? Nothing is normal. That resistance is exactly why you must continue. The ritual isn't about the activity. It's about telling your brain we are still who we were. The rules still apply. Protocol 4. Story maintenance. Every night, share one story from normal life. A memory, a joke, an event. This isn't nostalgia. It's psychological anchoring. It preserves the identity that crisis is trying to erase. Protocol 5. Early intervention. If you see the signs of transformation, withdrawal, rationalization language, dehumanizing speech, address it immediately, not with judgment, with curiosity. You called them animals. That's not a word you used before. The goal isn't to prevent all psychological change. That's impossible. The goal is to slow the transformation, to create friction, to buy time for rational thought to re-engage. Every hour you delay Phase 4 is an hour you remain yourself. One final truth, perhaps the most uncomfortable of all. The people most likely to transform quickly are not the weak, they're the certain. Those who believe they know exactly who they are, who believe they could never change.
Because certainty prevents preparation. Why prepare for transformation if you believe you're immune? The person who says, "I would never," has never asked, "Under what conditions would I?" And that question, that's the beginning of real readiness.
48 hours, 2 days, that's the window. After that, biology takes over. The brain you have now will not be the brain making decisions unless you prepare that brain, train that brain, build systems that function when willpower fails. The neighbor who shares today may take tomorrow. The friend who protects may betray. The stranger who threatens may have been kind 2 days ago. And you may become unrecognizable, even to yourself.
Understanding this isn't pessimism, it's clarity. When you know the pattern, you can disrupt it. When you see the signs, you can intervene. When you expect the transformation, you can prepare. Knowledge isn't darkness. Ignorance is.
In the next video, we'll examine hour 72, when the transformations are complete, when the new order emerges, and how to navigate a world where good people have become something else entirely. I'm Kronos. 48 hours changes everything, including you. Prepare accordingly.